The question about the other male DNA found at and around the house is an intriguing one. All right, this is one of the other questions, as I mentioned. In a June 23 filing, one of Kohberger's defense attorneys, J. Weston Logsden, wrote about the existence of other male DNA found at the scene. Now, keep in mind, this is a defense lawyer. Here's how he described things. Quote, by December 17th, 2022, lab analysts were aware of 2 additional males' DNA within the house where the deceased were located, and another unknown male DNA on a glove found outside the residence on November 20th, 2022. To this date, the defense is unaware of what sort of testing, if any, was conducted on these samples, other than the STR DNA profiles. Further, these 3 separate and distinct male DNA profiles were not identified through CODIS, leading to the conclusion that the profiles do not belong to Mr. Kohberger, end quote. CODIS is the Combined DNA Index System, which is a national DNA database maintained by the FBI. If you're a criminal and they've tested you, you're probably in there. The defense is claiming the other male DNA samples were not ever identified and therefore do not belong to their clients. So who are these other males? You can bet the defense is going to make something of this at trial. Why didn't you investigate? Could that have been a suspect? We don't know who these other males are. Other than to say the police, the FBI, the prosecutors, they obviously believe they're not related and that they have the right man under arrest, the sole killer in this gruesome crime. Okay, back to that same filing and defense attorney Logsden. Quote, there is no connection between Mr. Kohberger and the victims. There is no explanation for the total lack of DNA evidence from the victims in Mr. Kohberger's apartment, office, home, or vehicle. In essence, through the lack of disclosure and their motion to protect the genetic genealogy investigation, the state, this is again the defense lawyer claiming this, is hiding its entire case, end quote. He goes on from there. The state apparently thinks that they need not explain how they came to think that it was Mr. Kohberger's DNA on the sheath. Presumably, the defense is expected to accept at face value that the sheath had touched DNA just waiting for testing by all the FBI's myriad resources. Additionally, the defense is to guess whether the state focused its investigation on Mr. Kohberger via a bizarrely complex DNA tree experiment, end quote. You can see what they're doing here, right? Planting doubts. What's genetic genealogy? Is it reliable? Why can't we get more info? We need to know more. This whole thing stinks. The defense continues, the state appears to be trying to hide its original domino such that Kohberger cannot discover why he was targeted. Mr. Kohberger has the right to discover and question the investigation that led to him, end quote. Okay, so you can now see the defense is opening a very interesting line of attack. They are implying the police may have planted the DNA on the knife sheath, put there by, as they write, quote, someone else during the investigation. We also get an indication about the way they plan to knock down the entire concept of investigative genetic genealogy, describing it as a, quote, bizarrely complex DNA tree experiment. They seem to want to argue that if that first domino in the trail to Kohberger was not reliable or was the product of junk science, all evidence resulting from that domino would be rendered inadmissible. Quote, fruit of the poisonous tree. That's what we used to call it in criminal procedure. And if the tree is poisonous and can't be allowed in evidence, neither can its fruit. That's how they'll try to get out the DNA swab of Kohberger's cheek, fruit of the poisonous tree. For context, here's a bit from my interview with Cece Moore. She is the expert on the practice of IgG, and she was on the show in January of last year in episode 470. Watch how she breaks down the way this works. It's used all the time these days. The way she and her team have been able to make hundreds of successful IDs of violent criminals.
So we get the unknown individual's DNA from the crime scene. It might be semen, blood, saliva, even touch DNA. So it goes to a private lab where it is analyzed, and just like they would analyze it at, say, Ancestry DNA or 23andMe, we need it to be compatible with those profiles because that's the type of profiles we're going to compare against. And then it goes to our bioinformaticists, our scientists, Now, because these are degraded, mixed, contaminated samples, these are not like if you spit in a tube and you have this perfect DNA sample. These are non-optimal samples. And so we need something called bioinformatics that work with that degraded DNA to try to repair it, upload it to GEDmatch and or family tree DNA. It's compared against all the people there that are opted into law enforcement matching. And we get a list of matches. And we can predict what the likely relationships are based on how much DNA someone is sharing with that unknown person.
You see, so they get a match maybe to somebody in the Kohberger family. We can tell you this touch DNA relates to somebody in the Kohberger family who gave their DNA to one of these services. But, Bryan Kohberger's not in there. Maybe not even Michael Kohberger. We don't know who it is. And then somebody like CeCe Moore starts pulling wedding announcements and funeral announcements and family histories and anything she can get her hands on to try to zero in on which Kohberger. What does the family tree look like? And how can I follow the tree down to the most likely person who's got a connection to Idaho? It's a very complex and fascinating means of crime detection. She's been doing it for some time now, and she's been solving tons of cases. So they got close enough to realize we should check out the DNA of Michael Kohberger, the dad. They legally got his garbage and figured out from that, this guy, Michael Kohberger, is the father of our suspect. He's only got one son, hence Bryan. Now, they had other evidence that led to Bryan. It's not all based on this touch DNA, but it would be a huge win if the defense can get the touch DNA thrown out. Huge. So we will see eventually what the prosecution has exactly when it comes to DNA. Is it just the touch? Is it more? And ultimately, whether it is admissible. For whatever it's worth, our lawyers, our legal experts we've talked to on the show, believe it will be admitted, notwithstanding these objections to IgG. But one of the many things we just don't know yet. Let me tell you a story about a guy named Leo Grillo. Leo was on a road trip and came across a Doberman. This dog was severely underweight and clearly in trouble. Leo rescued him and named him Delta. Sadly, Delta was just one of many animals that needed help, and this inspired Leo to start Delta Rescue, the largest no-kill, care-for-life animal sanctuary in the world. They've rescued thousands of dogs, cats, and horses from the wilderness, and they provide their animals with shelter, love, safety, a home. Dedication and everlasting love to animals, that is Leo's mission and legacy. Delta Rescue relies solely on contributions. And if you want caring for these animals to be part of your legacy, speak with your estate planner because there are tax benefits too. You can grow your estate while letting your love for animals live well into the future. Check out the estate planning tab on their website to learn more and speak with your advisor. We call a dog man's best friend for a reason. You can help those who need it most. Visit deltarescue.org today to learn more. That's deltarescue.org. Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.